I'm John McQuaid with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, this Monday we had the old Accuracy International AE Mark II out because we were installing the new Accuracy International pistol grip skins. These are an interesting new product that Accuracy International has put out that will allow you to take your old thumb hole chassis and you can convert it to either a pistol grip or thumb hole depending upon which back half you put on the skins. So I can take this rifle and just in a matter of minutes convert it from pistol grip to thumb hole or back and forth. So if you purchase a new chassis system, the new chassis systems, the long actions are already coming out with the new skins on them. The short actions should be coming out with these skins soon, and you'll be able to configure your chassis system to be a pistol grip or a thumb hole however you want it, and it gives you just some options to try out. That was one of the biggest complaints about the AI chassis and the AI rifles in particular, is that guys with some big Mongo hands didn't like trying to jam their thumb through that pistol grip. I didn't really find that it was a problem, but I like to shoot these either way. But the ergonomics now of this rifle really comes a whole lot closer to that of the AX system. In fact, the back half of this is almost identical to an AX 308. So it's kind of a nice thing to try out. But that's not why we're here on this Monday. That's just why I have the AE Mark II sitting out here. You guys have sent me a bunch of different questions about the 243. I mentioned a while back when we did the rebarrel on this rifle that I was moving from 308 to 243 for competitions. So a bunch of you guys basically asked me to talk about why I made that switch. Now the switch to 308 to 243 is not something to be taken lightly. 308, you can get around 10,000 rounds through a 308 barrel before you need to swap it out. Now, of course, that's going to depend upon how you use it. If you're constantly going out and getting that barrel smoking hot, then you're going to get considerably less mileage. If you're going out and you're just shooting one shot and letting it cool for 20 minutes between, then you may be able to extend that barrel life out a little bit longer than that. But you get a great amount of mileage out of a 308 barrel. You're just really not forcing that much gas and that much powder through that small of a hole, so you don't get the erosion in the throat as much as you might get with other calibers like the 243. One of the drawbacks of the 243 is you're still forcing almost the same amount of powder, the same amount of hot gases through a much smaller hole. And what that does is that causes the throat of the barrel to erode a lot quicker. Plus, you're forcing that bullet down the barrel a whole lot faster than you would with a 308. This, of course, causes the rifling to wear considerably faster. Service life for a 243 barrel in competition is generally going to be around 2,000 rounds. I don't know a lot of guys that are running more than 2,000 rounds out of a 243 barrel before they have it set back and have it rechambered. Now, this barrel, we're creeping up on 600 to 700 rounds on it, so I can't tell you how much life we're going to get out of this barrel here. This is a barrel that we purchased from Mile High out in Colorado, and I'll leave information for them down in the description below. Diane was nice enough to get this barrel to us in short order right before a competition, and because this is an Accuracy International, it's very easy to spin off the old barrel and spin on the new barrel without any fuss at all. Now, the main reason that I went with the 243 barrel over the 308 is that when you start to get out to extended ranges, there is a considerable ballistic advantage. The 243, in the 243, I was shooting a 107 grain Sierra Match King. Now, the 107 grain Sierra Match King has a much higher ballistic coefficient than the 175 grain Match King that I usually shoot in the 308. I vary back and forth between the 175 grain Match King and the 178 grain Hornady Boat Tail Hollow Point, just depending upon if I'm shooting factory ammunition or if I'm shooting my own hand loads. Those bullets run somewhere around 2550 to 2600 foot per second for factory loaded ammunition or for mild hand loads. Now with the Accuracy International, I can push those up, the 178 grain Hornadies, I can push them up to about 2,700 foot per second with no pressure signs, but that's just with the Accuracy International. If I try to do that on the Remington, I'll start to get sticky bolt lift and other indicators of pressure that I really don't want to be at, especially if I'm shooting on a hot day and I'm having to shoot rapid shots downrange. So in the factory ammunition, you're going to float right between 2,500 and 2,600 foot per second. Now with the loads that I use in this rifle right here for the 107 grain Match King, I actually developed for the Kentucky Precision Rifle Challenge, and there was a 3,000 foot per second speed limit. So these cartridges are designed to send that bullet downrange just under that. And I think what I ended up with was 2910 was about what my average muzzle velocity was for the 107 grain Match King. Now, that is not a hot load for a 243. When I did my load workup, I was getting 3,400 foot per second without any pressure signs out of this rifle with this barrel. So I can run those considerably faster, but of course the trade-off is when you run them faster, you're going to get less barrel life because you're just eating away at that throat a whole lot quicker. The other disadvantage is a lot of competitions now, because you're shooting on steel, they're starting to limit the speeds, because you start cranking these bullets down range at very high velocities, you can damage steel targets. So there's that. And also I think it's kind of an attempt to try to level the playing field out a little bit. But when you look at the difference downrange at 1,000 yards between the 308 shooting 175 grain Match Kings and the 243 shooting 107 grain Match Kings, there is a sizable difference. I grabbed the KAC Bullet Flight ballistic calculator on my iPhone, just plugged in a standard day at sea level, and cranked out some numbers real quick, and what I came out with shooting the 107 grain Match King at 2910 and the 175 grain Match King at 2550 is that the 243 had about 130 inches less drop at 1,000 yards. 130 inches is a lot. Now, that is not necessarily the reason why I chose the 243 over the 308, because drop is a whole lot easier to calculate than anything else. Your range is usually constant to the target, and once you get that doped out, once you figure out what the ballistic curve is on your rifle, and once you figure out what the range is to the target, it's very easy just to dial on or hold exactly what you need and hit it. So that's really not the deal breaker. The big difference that we run into is between the 243 and the 308 at 1,000 yards with a 10 mile per hour wind, there is a 25-inch difference in the wind drift. The wind will blow that 175 grain 30 caliber bullet 25 inches more off your target than it would the 107 grain Sierra Match King in the 243. That's quite a bit of difference when you consider that we're shooting MOA, sometimes MOA and a half targets. So, you know, if you're shooting a 10-inch steel plate at 1,000 yards, or, you know, 12-inch, 15-inch steel plate at 1,000 yards, and you've got 25 inches difference in drift between the 243 and the 308, that's a lot. What is going to really make the difference is your ability to read the wind. Now, obviously, if you are an expert at reading the wind and you have a constant wind that's not going to switch up on you, then, you know, you can go ahead and shoot that 30 caliber and you're probably going to be fine. But here's something to bear in mind. The time of flight on that 308 is 1 3/4 seconds at 1,000 yards. It takes 1 3/4 seconds, almost 2 full seconds, for that bullet to go from you to the target. Winds can change in 2 seconds. So, you know, keep that in mind. If you have a switchback wind all of a sudden drops off or changes directions, you are not going to be in as bad a shape shooting a wind cheater like the 107 Match King or even the 115 D-Tac than you are shooting a big heavy 30. So again, something to bear in mind. Now there are guys out there that are running the really heavy 30 caliber rounds that run higher ballistic coefficients, but again, you sacrifice speed when you start running the big heavy bullets. And really, one of the biggest factors in wind drift is the time of flight. So the quicker you can get that bullet down range, the better off you're going to be. Obviously, the ballistic coefficient factors into it as well, but you have to do that balancing act and decide if your time of flight, if your velocity, and if the increased ballistic coefficient is going to cancel each other out. So, you know, it's a big game to play around on your ballistic calculator and figure out what'll work. And I did a lot of that before I decided to go to the 243. Now, when we back off, because there are a lot of guys out there that shoot at less than 1,000 yards, if you're shooting, 500-yard matches, then maybe there's not so much of a draw to go to 243. In all honesty, most of our local matches, I end up still shooting the 308 because I get that extended barrel life. I don't have to worry about smoking barrels as quickly, and I can go with a shorter package. I really like to run long barrels on the 243 in order to get that velocity without really smashing the powder in the cases. I really want to get the most velocity I can out of the powder that I'm running. With the 308, you're not so much concerned with cranking that velocity way up there, and you can come back to a 20, 18, 16-inch barrel and shoot a 500-yard match and be just fine. Now, between the 107 grain Match King out of the 243, again running at 2910, and the 175 grain Match King out of the 308 running about 2550, when you come back to that 500-yard line, you're only getting about 18.5 inches less drop with the 243, and you're only getting about 5.5 inches less wind drift with a 10 mile per hour full value wind. So there you're seeing the 243 doesn't offer quite as much an advantage at the shorter distances as at the 1,000-yard line. So keep that in mind when you decide if 243 is right for you or if you want to stick with a 308. Now, of course, there is the intermediate range. There are the 6.5s, the 6.5 Creedmoor, 260, etc. You start getting into there, and there again you run into a compromise between barrel life and high ballistic coefficient and high velocity. It was something that I looked into when I decided to go this route, but really one of the big things that caused me to go with the 243 is the availability of brass locally. I can go into any of our gun shops here locally and buy bags of high quality 243 brass. I can go into any of our local shops and buy 107 grain Match Kings. They keep them on the shelf. So it's really not that big of a deal. When you start getting into the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 260, then you start to limit your choices on brass and start to limit your choices on where you can source things. If you buy all your stuff online, it's not a big deal because all those components are available online. You just have to select which ones you're going to go with and roll with them. I don't select a whole bunch of different types of brass. I generally work a load up with one type of brass, and then I'll stick with that type of brass unless I have a problem with it. With the 243 and with the 308, if I'm buying store-bought brass, I'll usually stick with Winchester brass because it's a good balance of quality and price. It's not expensive to the point where I cry if I lose a piece of brass, but it's high enough quality that I'm not worrying about variance from case to case. I try to keep the lots together, but within lots, I don't worry about massive variances. So there's that to keep in mind. You always want to think about a little bit further than just the numbers and the ballistics because supply is important, especially in times like we have now where people are buying stuff up as soon as it hits the shelves. So make sure you run by your local gun stores and see what they've got in stock before you decide on a caliber switch. When it all comes down to it, 308 just is not competitive anymore in any of the big matches. There are still 308 limited matches. Here later this year, we'll be going out to the Oregon Sniper Challenge, which is a 308 limited match. But mainly, you're seeing 308 limited matches where they're more geared towards military and law enforcement. When it's geared towards open civilian competition, then you're going to see the 6mm and 6.5s rule the roost. There are a ton of different caliber options out there. There are a ton of different Wildcats out there. There's stuff like 6mm Crusader, 6mm Creedmoor. There's the 7mm 08. Just tons of different calibers. What you need to do is sit down with a ballistic calculator, or if you don't have a ballistic calculator on your iPhone or iPad or Android device, then go to JBM Ballistics and start typing in some different caliber combinations and reasonable velocities. Don't bet the farm on the highest velocities that you see guys publicizing out there, because you may not be allowed to run that velocity, or your gun may not tolerate that velocity with your chamber, etc. So go with reasonable velocities when you're gaming it out and you're trying to figure out what's going to work for you. Now, when it's all said and done, it may work better for you just to look at the match results from the matches that you want to shoot. Take a look at the leaders, the top 10, and see what it is that they're shooting. There's probably a reason that they're choosing that caliber and that rifle for the match that they're going to. Utilize their experience to your benefit. This is one of the reasons that I love when match directors, when they post their scores, they don't just post the names of the top finishers, they post the equipment, the rifle and the caliber that they actually used. Because while an expert shooter can dust a novice with just about any equipment they pull off the shelf, expert shooters will shoot equipment that will allow them to perform to their absolute peak. So it helps you out to know what equipment they're using that helps them utilize their skills. So keep that in mind. For the close range game, stick with the 308. There's no reason to go with a barrel burner caliber that's going to cause you to have to replace barrels on a regular basis. You'll get more training value out of it. You'll be able to put more rounds downrange without worrying about, hey, am I smoking my barrel? Because the last thing you want to do is expend your barrel life in training, go to a match, and have that barrel give up in the middle of your match. So only use the barrel burners when you need them. I still do most of my training with the 308 and use the 243 when I need to compete. Obviously, you have to do some training with the caliber you're going to compete with, but that's the way I do it. That doesn't necessarily make it the best way. It just makes it my way. Now, if you guys have liked this video, please make sure you click that thumbs up button. If you've got questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you're a subscriber, thank you very much. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Helps us out, lets our numbers go up, and YouTube will let you know when we release new videos. Until next time, get out and shoot! Just a final note, if you need accessories for your Accuracy International, either new barrel, new skins, chassis system, what have you, or a complete Accuracy International rifle, give Mile High Shooting Supply a call. We will leave their information down in the description box. We're not paid to endorse them. We don't get anything off of this endorsement at all. I'm just doing it as a service to you guys because they have excellent customer service. They will do whatever they can to take care of you, and I'm still amazed that they were able to get us a replacement barrel for this rifle just in a matter of days. So really, they go above and beyond. So if you need anything from them, give them a call. Make sure you tell them we sent you. Thanks.